a result of all these concerns, the FDA has proposed new guidelines saying drug companies only have to list the most serious and common side effects. The hope is that the simplified list will make it easier to retain the information about the serious dangers. In other words, to put a spotlight on the biggest risks in the asterisks. Caveat emptor is the Latin term for let the buyer beware. Or in less Latin-y words, read the fine print. But in the world of marketing, there is also caveat venditor, meaning let the seller beware. Mandated disclaimers are there to protect the customer, but just as many disclaimers are there to protect the advertiser. It's an odd double-edged sword. We all know it's smart to read the fine print before we buy something or agree to website terms or commit to long-term financing. But so few of us take the time. In Georgia, a person won $10,000 after she discovered the reward hidden in the terms and conditions of an insurance policy. The company put it there to remind people it pays to read the fine print. Conversely, 22,000 people signed up to get free public Wi-Fi in England, only to discover they had inadvertently agreed to do 1,000 hours of community service, which included cleaning toilets and sewer blockages. You never know what you'll find in the mouse type. It's also interesting to see humor sneak into disclaimers. You may say disclaimers are serious business with no place for humor, but I'll push back and say humorous disclaimers make you pay attention. And if history has taught us anything, attention should be paid to disclaimers and fine print in all the corners of our lives. Because you never want to ignore a costly asterisk, and you never want to accidentally iron your clothes while you're wearing them. When you're under the influence. I'm Terry O'Reilly. This episode was recorded in the Terrestream Mobile Recording Studio. Producer Debbie O'Reilly. Sound engineer Keith Oman. Theme music by Ari Posner and Ian Lefevre. Research, Jillian Gora. Co-writer, Sydney O'Reilly. If you like this episode, you might also enjoy a previous one titled Nudge, The Persuasive Power of Whispers. Season 3, Episode 17. You'll find it free in our archives wherever you download your podcasts. See you next week.
Under the influence
may cause the following symptoms: itchy rashes, full body hair loss, projectile vomiting, gigantic eyeball, the condition known as hot dog fingers.
This is CBC Radio 1, 990 AM, 89.3 FM in Winnipeg.
Female athletes have always needed grit and talent. But for decades, they've also needed a certificate.
To prove that they were actually women, according to different definitions.
And even now, they're still being checked and questioned. Their story is the newest podcast series from CBC and NPR's Embedded. It's called Tested.
Tested, available now on CBC Listen or wherever you get your podcasts.
You know the feeling of finding a really good podcast? Or the feeling of someone always being there, like your favorite radio show? Stream CBC Podcasts, CBC Music, and CBC Radio anytime, anywhere. Download the CBC.
This is CBC News. At 12 o'clock, we're at 19 degrees with showers over downtown Winnipeg. Good afternoon, I'm Matt Humphrey. Manitoba is banning mobile phones for younger students in schools. There will also be restrictions on mobile phones for older students. The CBC's Bartley Kivas has the details.
The NDP government's following through on a plan to restrict mobile phone use in schools. Kids in kindergarten to grade 8 will no longer be able to use mobile phones during school hours. Students in grades 9 to 12 will be able to take phones to school, but won't be allowed to use them in class. These older students will be allowed to use their phones during breaks and at lunchtime. Education Minister Nello Altomare says the goal is to reduce distractions. There will be exemptions for students with medical needs or other specialized educational needs. Teachers will also have discretion to allow cell phone use in class for educational purposes. Premier Wabkinew is expected to address the new restrictions this afternoon. Bartley Kivas, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Good news today for people in Bunnabonabe Cree Nation as the evacuation continues. The growth and movement of the 6,000-hectare wildfire south of the community has slowed somewhat. The Provincial Wildfire Service Director, Earl Simmons, says as many as 6 military Hercules planes are bringing people out of Bunnabonabe. Simmons says the weather is helping crews.
The community got some rain overnight, 15 millimeters of rain, and a little less on the fire. Conditions are favorable today, so that's good news. The community is safe today as they continue with their evacuation, but the predicted weather going forward is going to be challenging for the firefighters on that fire.
Simmons says the province is putting out a call for help for more firefighters from other parts of Canada and the United States. 32 people are facing criminal charges after a police investigation into a Toronto street gang, which has connections to Manitoba. Toronto police say officers started investigating the Jamestown Crips last September. They say the goal was to disrupt a drug and firearm trafficking network, which spanned across Ontario, Manitoba, Newfoundland, and Labrador. Police say gang members also attempted to distribute concealed drugs through Canada Post. Officers executed 35 search warrants in Ontario and in Thompson, Manitoba. 158 charges have been filed. Law enforcement officials in California say at least one person has been arrested in connection with Matthew Perry's death. The actor died last October. He was found in his hot tub with ketamine in his system. The coroner ruled Perry's death was an accident. Police in Los Angeles are expected to give an update next hour. Steve Futterman has your details.
I have confirmed from some sources with the law enforcement officials in Los Angeles that some arrests have been made. We've not been told specifically who they are. It could be Matthew Perry's doctors. It could be someone who allegedly supplied him with ketamine. Remember, when Matthew Perry was found dead last year, there was drug paraphernalia around the area. And the coroner's report initially did talk about him drowning, but there was this ketamine connection. And authorities have always been suspicious about how he got the ketamine. Remember, he had been sober, we believe, for around a year and a half. He had talked about for years his problems dealing with substance abuse. Now, he was being treated, we know from the coroner's report, by a psychiatrist and an anesthesiologist who was labeled as his primary doctor. These are people who may be under suspicion right now. This is something that law enforcement has been very concerned about from the get-go, and it's not a big surprise that some arrests have been made. Steve Futterman for CBC News, Chicago.
Manitoba researcher Jason Kindrachuk recently returned from the Democratic Republic of the Congo, where he was studying the Mpox virus. The World Health Organization has declared Mpox a global health emergency. Kindrachuk is the Canadian Research Chair on Emerging Viruses at the University of Manitoba.
We're seeing a very, very quick spread, and the problem is we're in a resource-limited area, so we don't have the diagnostics and certainly the the contact tracing capacity to be able to identify all of those cases expediently. So it's becoming a bit of a cat and mouse race right now.
Kindrachuk says the challenge in the DRC is getting information and vaccines to more rural locations. He says in Canada, vaccines are ready and available. While much of rural Canada is facing a slow population decline, the town of Moosomin, Saskatchewan hopes to go in a different direction. It's offering $30,000 to anyone who builds a home in the community just west of the Manitoba border. The town is paying for the incentive using $1 million in federal funding. Local chamber president Kevin Weedmark says it's experiencing a boom right now.
Moosomin is the only town of 3,000 in Canada where you can come and complete your medical residency. That's phenomenal. Moosomin is the smallest center in Saskatchewan where you can get chemotherapy, but it's not the least busy program, telling you that it's busier here than some larger centers.
Weedmark says the town on the Trans-Canada between Winnipeg and Regina has attracted a diverse group of newcomers, including a strong Filipino and a strong Ukrainian community. And that is your CBC News from Winnipeg. For news anytime, you can head to our website, cbc.ca/Manitoba, or you can use the CBC News app. Looking at the forecast for the day, in Winnipeg, we are seeing showers throughout the day. Few showers, light showers at times. A high of 22 today in Winnipeg. Brandon, a risk of thunder with showers, and a high of 24 and windy. Dauphin, a chance of storms. We're seeing some sunshine poke through at times in Dauphin. A high of 26. Flin Flon, smoky with a chance of showers. A high of 26 as well. Thompson, smoky and rainy with a high around 24 degrees. And in Churchill, rain today with a chance of thunder. And you're seeing the temperature drop down to around 13 degrees this afternoon. Right now, you're listening to CBC Radio 1.
Good afternoon. Welcome to Radio Noon. I'm Brittany Greenslade, filling in this week for Janet Stewart. We have a big show ahead, and we want to hear from you. Starting at 12:35, you can give us your thoughts on the recent violent attacks in the city because people are on edge. What can be done to counteract the fear of walking in your own neighborhood? We're going to be speaking with the founder of Sabe Peace Walkers. That's when our phone lines will open and you can join the conversation. But if you want to start us off right now, you can text us 204-588-7355 and let us know your thoughts. Plus, have you ever dreamed about writing a book? Well, coming up, our next guest made it happen. He and a friend spent a year and a half photographing the place they love. We're going to be speaking about Gimli and a year in pictures. But first, we're going to be checking in on the people of Bunnabonaby Cree Nation and the evacuations. It is 12:07 here. Well, as we said, there are evacuations still happening in Bunnabonaby Cree Nation. As many as 6 military Hercules planes are helping airlift people out of the northern community. It's also known as Oxford House. People are being taken to Thompson, Winnipeg, and Brandon. Wet weather is giving crews a bit of a helping hand, battling a wildfire about 10 kilometers from the community. Earl Simmons is wildfire director at the Manitoba Wildlife Service. He spoke this morning with CBC's Megan Ketchison.
The province has been very challenged across the north right as we speak. We've had over 71 fires that are burning at this time. And a couple days ago, we were very concerned about Fire 97, which was about 13 kilometers south of Oxford House. So we did some predictions, and given the fuel type, we contacted Indigenous Services Canada along with the community and advised them that they should evacuate. And then we worked together with the community and Indigenous Services and the province and the federal government got together. And because of the need to do it as soon as possible, the federal government engaged the Department of National Defense, and we were very fortunate to get some C-130 Hercules, 4 originally, and now we're up to 6 to help evacuate the folks from the community. It moved yesterday, I guess about 4 kilometers, 3 to 4 kilometers. We predicted closer to 7, so that was a good news story. The weather wasn't with the smoke and overcast conditions. It helped us with the fire not moving so close, but we're still very concerned with the proximity of that fire to the community and the winds from the south pushing it right into the community. So our first priority was to have the folks evacuate from the community, keep them safe. And then our next priority was to get into the community and start doing some value protection. So staff from the Wildfire Service, along with the Office of the Fire Commissioner, and people from fire departments across the province, the Manitoba Fire Service also assisting putting up those sprinkler kits. The community got some rain overnight, 15 millimeters of rain, and a little less on the fire. Conditions are favorable today, so that's good news. The community is safe today as they continue with their evacuation, but the predicted weather going forward is going to be challenging for the firefighters on that fire.
When you say that, we've got a little bit of rain today, but what are the challenging weather conditions that you're seeing that would make this even more tricky?
Just as after tomorrow, then we're going to get the hot, dry weather again. High pressure moving in, hot, dry weather, windier conditions, and it'll take no time for that fire to become very active again. So we'll do the best we can to take advantage of the break in the weather and see what we can do to try to corral that fire. But it's a very large fire, over 6,000 hectares probably by now. So there's a lot of work to be done there. So we're going to do our best to try and prevent that fire from growing in size.
And again, do we know sort of the cause of that one?
That was a lightning fire, yeah. And most of our fires are lightning fires. And unfortunately, in the last few days, we've had about a half a dozen human-caused fires across the north. So we certainly want people to be very careful out there, and we don't need people deliberately starting fires either. We're stretched very thin, and all of Western Canada is, in fact. So we can't afford to have any extra fires. And with this weather that came in, unfortunately, there's some lightning with that as well. So given the dry conditions, I'm sure we'll see some lightning fires popping up in the next few days.
So what are the challenges with getting people in and out of that community?
The Red Cross and Indigenous Services Canada and the federal government are looking after the evacuation, but the big challenge with doing any work in those areas is the remoteness of it. There's no road access or rail access. It's all fly-in. And then, in addition to that, you have smoke conditions coming in, smoke coming in from the west, and from fires in Manitoba that can also make it very challenging. And the smoke can be very thick right down to the ground. So then unfortunately, aircraft can't fly. So that's another challenge with that. So that's another reason we, take advantage of the ability to get the folks evacuated while the weather conditions allowed for that, and make it and safe and controlled, so there's no panic either. That was the other thing, to try to give the community a little bit of advance notice. It's still a lot of work for the Red Cross and Indigenous Services, and of course the military, and we appreciate all their efforts to do this as fast as they can.
And so how many crews do you have on the ground? Are they mostly from Manitoba?
In Manitoba, across the province, we are all Manitoba crews except up at the fire by the Marcel Clone First Nation by Lynn Lake. We have 10 firefighters from Minnesota and Wisconsin helping us up. And we put a request in for firefighters from across Canada as well, as to see if we can get a few from the United States. But everybody's really challenged. It's very busy, so we'll see what we can do to get more firefighters.
And all of ours are still in the province. They haven't been sent to Alberta or anything like that?
No, we're far too busy to help any of our neighboring provinces. Unfortunately, this year we're not able to do that. And the crews that we did have in that area, our first focus was to protect all those structures and keep the community safe. And then we'll focus on trying to tackle that fire.
That was Earl Simmons, wildfire director at the Manitoba Wildfire Service. He spoke this morning with CBC's Megan Ketchison.
The CBC News app delivers the answers you want to know and need to know.
What an extraordinary scene.
The breaking stories that shape your world. Reporting from the scene onto your screens.
Dropping the 8 now. We're just approaching Gaza.
Your source for mobile news. Delivered when you want, where you want.
This situation has changed very quickly.
The CBC News app. Download for free.
You're listening to Radio Noon on CBC Radio 1, 89.3 FM, 990 AM. And we have lots to go still. I want to hear from you coming up at 12:35 when we open our listener lines. We've had a number of recent violent attacks in the city. We're hearing from people who are on edge. What can be done to counteract the fear of walking in your neighborhood? We're going to be speaking with the founder of Sabe Peace Walkers, but I want to hear from you. Do you feel safe? What do you think needs to be done? And what has your experience been like? You can text us now, 204-588-7355. We're also going to be talking about a new book out, Gimli, A Year in Pictures. Well, it is a bit of a dreary and wet day here in the southern part of the province. In Winnipeg, we're dealing with those showers, looking for about 20 to 30 millimeters of rain. A little bit of wind this afternoon as well, those showers ending later this evening. Same thing over in Brandon, where you are also going to be dealing with a risk of a thunderstorm later this afternoon. Also looking for about 10 to 20 millimeters of rain. Up in Thompson, still that air quality advisory from the wildfires that we're dealing with, but a mix of sun and cloud, about a 60% chance of showers later this afternoon as well, but also a risk of thunderstorms that we're going to be keeping an eye on, and that widespread smoke that you're dealing with, highs of 24. And in Churchill, more showers. This is what we're seeing across the province right now. A little bit windy, gusting up to 50 kilometers later this afternoon. It is 12:15 here on Radio Noon. Well, have you ever dreamed about writing a book? Our next guest made it happen. Andy Blick is a filmmaker and retired CBC television producer. His friend TJ Fergala is a realtor. They have different backgrounds, of course, but a shared love of the community they live in. Together, they've produced and published a book entitled Gimli, A Year in Pictures. Co-author Andy Blick tells Janet Stewart why they decided to put together this book about Gimli.
Tell us about this book. Why did you want to put together a book about Gimli?
Well, TJ and I both really love this place, and we love living here. And we just thought it'd be an interesting project to spend a year photographing the community and listening to people's stories, and then create a book that we could reflect back to them, the experience. And that's what we did. It's sort of a nonprofit project. It took us a long time. It was a lot of work. And we just released it.
And how do you feel having just released it?
Relieved on one level. It was a ton of work, but excited too, and pleased that people seem to really like it. And it's just great to have done it and to do this for our town. And I really would encourage others in other communities to give this a try.
Really? What did you find so important about it?
Well, it was a bit of an experiment. Like we didn't know whether we'd get enough interesting content. You know, it's a small community, a well-known community too. And so we just embarked on this journey, this search. We interviewed about 85 different stories and people and took their pictures. And as we did the project, it emerged that that everyone has a good story to tell if you just dig deep enough, and that the community itself is a little different than we expected it to be when we started doing the digging.
Oh, that is interesting. How long have you lived in Gimli?
I've been coming here most of my adult life, but I've lived here since 2012.
Okay, but there are things you learned and discovered about this community that you thought you knew so well. What did you learn that you didn't know already?
Well, I think as most people know, this community is unique. It has this Icelandic heritage and a strong Ukrainian heritage as well. But really, it's really become a much more diverse and interesting place. And one of the other things we learned was that what a destination it is, that people come here from, particularly in the summer, but increasingly in the winter, from everywhere, either to see family or come back or just to visit this place. It has a reputation of being a great place to be in the summertime. And those people were here. And we went down to the beach and photographed there, and there were literally people from around the world, on the beach. And we talked to them about coming here and experiencing this. And it's really neat for the community to have that and to have those folks here, to be a part of our life here. And we're looking forward to seeing them soon if we ever get some decent weather.
Apparently it's coming. I just looked
Good.
at the forecast and it looks like it's coming. You are a storyteller. You have been for longer than I've known you. The stories you heard must have been magical, meeting these people. Can you share one with us?
I think Anna Stevens really sticks out in my mind. When we interviewed her, she was 100 years old, now 101. And it was just her attitude towards life, just such a positive attitude. She gets up every day. She says, I just love people, and goes out down and has coffee with her friends in the Rotary Towers. And you just get that sense of how important that is to have that kind of positive outlook, to love people and be surrounded by a family. And what's interesting about her is that her mom, her late mom, died at 109. She was one of the oldest living Icelanders in the world. I think the only one at the time. And that's the kind of detail that comes out when you do this, and you learn things about people that are greater than just the community. And the other thing that really was great was, and I think that really struck me, was the relationship between Indigenous people and the community here, that on both Canada Day and on National People's Indigenous Day here, it was just how the two communities came together. They were very well attended, both of those things. And just watching that happen you had that sense of, well, it's on these kinds of things that reconciliation will work when the different cultures come together, and just reach out to each other.
It's Gimli, a year in pictures. Tell us about the photos. This is radio, and anyone watching on YouTube and anyone who's curious can go after the interview and find CBC Manitoba in YouTube. You'll find the photos there. We're sharing some of them. Can you describe perhaps a couple that you find extraordinary?
Yeah, I mean, it was, it's the beauty of this place. We shot in winter and we shot in summer, spring and fall. TJ's a great photographer, and he did the majority of the photography work. I did about 50 of the pictures. I did most of the interviewing, but it's the beauty of this place where we captured that, and it was just, and we enjoyed doing that, sort of reflecting back to ourselves and the community. Look at where we live. And then he's a great portrait photographer. And there are some great pictures of people like Kirk Creed, who's a potter, an amazing potter, has an outdoor kiln. We shot with him one night when he was firing. And those pictures, they're, for me, they're magic. They really tell the story in an intimate kind of way. And that's what really worked for me. And I think it works for the book. That's the feedback that we're getting, that it's that kind of a project.
You're getting positive feedback. Where can people buy this book if they're interested?
At the moment, we just released it. So it's at HP Turkison and Son store. I think most people who know Gimli know the store, that it's for sale in the store at the moment. And at some point in the future, we're hoping to have it in the stores in Winnipeg.
That store is a landmark in Gimli for anybody who has visited. You know that place that used to be the general store 100 years ago. It was there. I know you've seen your name in the credits of other creative projects. What's it like, as a guy who loves Gimli, to walk by that store and see the poster in the window of your book?
It's a great feeling, and it's really great to do something for your community and to engage. And we met people we never would have met if we hadn't done the project. And I have to say, it's a little nerve-wracking too, because you do this, and it's not like some anonymous piece that you and I would do for the network or something like that. I'm going to be on the streets of town. If people didn't like it, I'm going to hear about it. But so far, the feedback has been great. And I think people, they get it. They kind of get why we did this. And we're getting that kind of feedback, that it is a panoramic view of the community. You really get a sense, a snapshot. It's not everybody. It's a snapshot of what this place is like.
Andy Blick, we're so grateful that you could share this snapshot with us.
Thanks, Janet. Nice to be here.
TJ Fergala is the co-author of this book, took many of the beautiful photographs you described. Please congratulate him, too. Take care, Andy.
I will. Thanks, Janet.
Andy Blick and his friend TJ Fergala co-wrote the book Gimli, A Year in Pictures. Janet Stewart spoke to him from his home in Gimli back in June.
The CBC Music Top 20. CBC Music Live. All right. Savor the flavor of the Francophone world on C'est Formidable. Experience the next wave of Indigenous music with Reclaim. The global sounds of frequencies. End your day or start your late night with music on CBC Radio 1. Weeknights at 11, 11:30 in Newfoundland, and on demand on CBC Listen.
Well, there's been some incredible new music released out of Winnipeg lately, including a new album from Slow Spirit. This next tune is the title track from That's the Gods Talking.
That's the gods talking. He said, sitting around the fire, winter winds are whipping our heads. That's the gods talking. He shrugged, cracking another old Milwaukee. Heavy clouds hanging above. You can't see the stars, and you're shivering in the dark. Call out your own signs, follow your own spark. And that's the gods talking. That's the gods talking. That's the gods talking. When your path is laid for you, when you arrive at the fire, and your choice is made for you, that's the gods talking. Let's fade when you're carrying a heavy load, and the mystery moves the weight. When you can't see the stars, and you're shivering in the dark. Call out your own signs, follow your own spark. That's the gods talking. That's the gods talking. That's the gods talking.
That was Slow Spirit with That's the Gods Talking. Well, in just a few minutes, we're going to be opening up the phone lines because we want to hear from you. There's been a number of recent violent attacks in the city. We're hearing from some people that they have been on edge because of this. So really, what can be done to counteract the fear of walking in your own neighborhood? We're going to be speaking with the founder of Sabe Peace Walkers. Our phone lines will be opening at 12:35. You can text us in right now if you want to join the conversation, 204-588-7355. And we've already heard from one of our listeners who wrote this in to us. I wrote the mayor this morning to ask where the promised transit safety officers are and got no answer. I and several others on the 18, 11, and 20 have witnessed 0 safety officers and have all witnessed issues on board that could have been dealt with properly with the guards on board. We as citizens have had to deal with violence on board ourselves. They go on to say their kids, both now teens, were really excited to start taking public transit to school this year. But after witnessing the violence on the buses firsthand and continually reading about violent attacks on buses, no one in their family is comfortable with taking the bus anywhere. So I ask again, they say, where are these safety officers that were campaigned on and promised? So that's one thing they would like to see on how we could be making this city safer, on how people could feel safer, not just coming downtown, but coming around the city in general by themselves. I want to hear from you. Again, you can text us in right away here, 204-588-7355. Join the conversation. What has your experience been like? Do you feel safe? Have you had an incident happen? Do you think think that we're doing a pretty good job out there right now? Or is there something that you would like to see? Maybe even something that's being done in a different city that you've seen while traveling or visiting that could work here. So that's our call in today. That number will open up at 12:35, 204-780-0893. Give me a call. It's Brittany Greenslade here hosting Radio Noon. Your news is coming up next.
This is CBC News. At 12:30, we're at 19 degrees with showers over downtown Winnipeg. Good afternoon. I'm Matt Humphrey. Starting this September, Manitoba will ban cell phones in school for students from kindergarten to grade 8, and students in grades 9 to 12 will be barred from using their phones while in class. This is part of the NDP following through on a plan to restrict mobile phone use. The education minister says the goal is to reduce distractions. There will be exemptions for students with medical needs or other specialized educational needs. Teachers will also have discretion to allow cell phone use in class for educational purposes. As many as 6 military Hercules planes are helping airlift people out of Bunabonabee Cree Nation today. People are being taken to Thompson, Winnipeg, and Brandon. Weather is giving crews a bit of help battling a wildfire about 10 kilometers from the community. Earl Simmons is the provincial wildfire service director. He says overnight there was around 15 millimeters of rain in the region.
A good news story. The weather wasn't with the smoke and overcast conditions. It helped us with the fire not moving so close, but we're still very concerned with the proximity of that fire to the community and the winds from the south pushing it right into the community.
Simmons says Manitoba has put out a request for help from firefighters from other parts of Canada and the United States. In international news, mediators are holding a new round of talks in Doha and Qatar. They're aimed at stopping the Israel-Hamas war and heading off an even larger regional conflict, the CBC's Richard Madden explains.
U.S. negotiators are urging Israel and Hamas to make compromises as this latest round of ceasefire talks get underway in Doha. But expectations of a breakthrough are low. Hamas has refused to attend, accusing Israel of stalling to prolong the war, while Israel accuses Hamas of stalling by keeping hostages in Gaza. White House National Security spokesperson John Kirby believes a deal is still within reach.
Both sides need to show compromise. Both sides need to show some leadership here. We are now talking about the implementing details of the deal itself, the smaller gaps that we absolutely believe can be narrowed in terms of how the deal is executed.
But the conflict could expand. Israel is now bracing for a possible attack from Iran, revenge for a Hamas leader recently killed on Iranian soil. The Israeli government has neither confirmed or denied responsibility. Richard Madden, CBC News, Washington.
And we're following developing news this afternoon. California police have arrested at least one person in connection with the death of Matthew Perry. Last October, the 54-year-old Friends actor was found dead in his hot tub. Autopsy reports found a large amount of ketamine in his blood. The drug is a surgical anesthetic that can be used to treat depression. The coroner ruled his death an accident. Police in California are giving an update right now, and we'll have more on that for you as the day progresses, as well as all the other news. And that's your CBC News from Winnipeg.
Thank you so much, Matt.
Back soon.
Well, you're listening to Radio Noon on CBC Radio 189.3 FM, 990 AM. I'm Brittany Greenslade. I'm your host this week. Welcome back. Our phone lines are now open, 204-780-0893. I want to hear from you about your thoughts on safety in the community. 2 violent attacks have made headlines this week, one with a machete, another unrelated attack with a baseball bat. These were both random attacks, and they left 2 young people in hospital with significant and life-altering injuries. We also heard as many as 10 7-Eleven stores in Winnipeg could close, again being blamed on theft and violence. So what can we do to make our city a safe place? Please join the conversation with us. How safe do you feel? What are your biggest concerns? What do you want to see happen? That call-in number, 204-780-0893, or if you prefer to text, that's fine too, 204-588-7355. Daniel Hidalgo is the founder of Sabe Peace Walkers and joins me this afternoon. Hi, Daniel.
Hey, how are you doing today?
I'm good. Thanks so much for joining us.
Absolutely. Happy to be here.
Well, we've already got a couple texts in, some really talking about bus safety here. But I want to start off just talking to you a little bit about why you think there's been so much violence lately in the city.
Yeah, I think it's a combination of compounded issues that intersect, and it stems from a multifaceted variety of things, starting out from family environment to social and economic factors. The circumstances that a lot of these perpetrators find themselves living in every day, the fact that they themselves are often in survival mode, but it also extends beyond that into, some of the psychological factors with regards to mental health issues. Their age even is an issue too, because oftentimes teen boys in particular tend to be risk takers and impulsive, and sometimes they lack that ability to emotionally regulate themselves when they're dysregulated.
Yeah, we've seen a number of these violent crimes in the past year in particular, but over the past few years being committed by young offenders in this city. Talk to me a little bit about why you found Sabe Peace Walkers.
So I founded Sabe Peace Walkers as a response to some of the issues we were seeing with regards to the unsheltered relatives that we were seeing in the community and the treatment that they were facing. But I also founded Community 204, and they work directly with our youth and our inner city youth as a means of providing what I would like to consider prevention and intervention services, as well as much needed mentorship as a deviating influence away from the other things that, the inner city youth are susceptible to because they don't have any outlets. And so that's where that kind of came.
You guys have been really instrumental in a lot of areas in this city. I know your team has been walking around Osborne for a number of months now. I want to turn to some texts because we're already getting calls and texts from our listeners right now. This one, and I don't have a name, unfortunately, but this texter says they, walking and going by bus, especially towards Transcona, has felt a little scary to them. They had a stalking incident just over a week ago near Monroe Street, and said as they were getting on the bus, it was a very kind bus driver, they say, that helped, lock down the bus until they could call an Uber. And they'd really like to see more police officers on those buses or even stationed in more roadways. And the other texter we said also said something about public transit being scary and witnessing a lot of violence there. What do you see?
I see a lot of those same things. When you see the word public transit, that means that it's open to anyone. It's accessible. It's there, and the expectation is that those things are not needed to be secured or patrolled or monitored. So it's for those looking for the opportunity to perpetrate those negative things. That's the prime place to do it. Unfortunately, I do agree that police presence is valuable. I also think that they arrive in response to things. I think that more needs to be done as a preventative measure and a proactive measure with regards to reducing a lot of those things. And it's super unfortunate because public transit is utilized for so many things, whether it's education, getting to and from your school and your classes, work, employment, and just commuting. And so those things need to be prioritized and made safe.
Just want to lay out that number for people again. 204-780-0893 is what you can call. We'd love to hear from you. Some text calls coming in as well. 204-588-7355. Daniel, I want to know what you think about, we see a lot of property crime as well, and that can make people feel unsafe. We had one texter saying, what about the vandalism? Huge windows being broken at Shoppers Drug Marts and other places around the city. We've seen, 7-Eleven, we're hearing might close a number of their stores around the city as well. Do you think that plays a role in how safe people are feeling, and do we need to put more focus on that?
Absolutely it does, because that affects the optics of the neighborhood. And when I think of those stores that they're mentioning, I associate a lot of my childhood happy memories with 7-Eleven and things like that. We're the Slurpee capital of the world, right? There's a lot of positive stuff with those things, and we want to be encouraged to shop at stores. And so when it's destroyed and dismantled and vandalized, it's certainly a deterrent from people going there. And it does correlate with a lot of the fears that people are expressing. I truly believe that the fact that these things are happening is because the folks that are doing these things are often entrenched in poverty, survivor mode, mental illness, addictions. Like, there's so many underlying issues that really contribute to these occurrences.
Yeah, we've been hearing that a lot. You mentioned just, those memories of walking to 7-Eleven and corner stores in general. I remember walking to them by myself or with my siblings to get some candy, when we were allowed to. Have a few extra bucks, you could go. And there's a lot of parents now that I hear from who say they don't know if they'd feel okay letting their kids walk a few blocks down the street anymore. When we talk about this violence, what does it tell you about some of the people and the connections in the community? We do know that there's a lot of vulnerable people right now and a lot of people that are hurting and struggling.
Absolutely. And it tells me that exact thing right there. It tells me that people are struggling, people are fearful. It tells me that youth are unsupported. It tells me that there's ongoing systemic issues that are chronic, and it's resulting in a lot of these occurrences. But on the flip side to that, it also tells me that the city and the community is longing and yearning for answers, and they're willing to come together in order to determine what those answers look like and how they can kind of get the city back to what it should have always been. So for me, there's hope in that. But we certainly have to start addressing the underlying issues. And I think we need to start supporting the things that have been proven to work and maybe kind of shifting to a more progressive approach, rather than always enforcing, consequence and that type of stuff. I think we need to really be proactive and kind of figure out why these things are even happening to begin with, rather than responding after it's already happened.
Yeah. Chloe Friesen is behind taking all of your calls and your texts, so you can give her a call. Our call-in number, 204-780-0893. Of course, you can text us, but I would love to hear from your lovely voices. Text number, 204-588-7355. Daniel, we did get a text in here that I want to ask you about that has to do with race-motivated violence. And we've seen this, pop up from time to time against all sorts of different kinds of races. This person in particular said they had a number of youngsters telling them that they were on their land. They say they're of Asian origins and they were waiting for a bus. So is that something that you're seeing more when you and your team are out?
Yeah, I do see a certain level of ethnic and cultural divide. I do think that there is certainly overrepresentation with regards to who we perceive as being the perpetrators of these things. And I certainly think that when people are in clusters, for example, the group that you had just mentioned there, it certainly creates an opportunity for folks that are unstable or angry or violent to target them for that specific reason. So sometimes it's just, it really isn't about that. It's more about the underlying issues that individual, that perpetrator is going through, and then that's just the outlet that they choose.
Can you take me through, what your team members might see on a daily basis?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So the Sabe Peace Walkers, when we're out there on patrol, we often see, it depends on the weather and stuff like that, but most of the times, because we've established a relationship out there and we've built up some really good rapport, we're often approached when it comes to various forms of crises. I was patrolling with the group the other day, and a woman on the bridge didn't feel safe talking to Winnipeg police, but she felt safe talking to the Sabe Peace Walker female team. One, because they looked the same, the approach was a little bit more gentle, and there was some compassion, and that's the premise of the approach that we use, is compassion and empathy. Other than that, we definitely see folks whose basic needs just simply aren't being met with regards to food, particularly food and water. When we have extreme heat, it's water. And then when we have the variation in our extreme weather, it's often needs pertaining to the extremities, like appropriate clothing, gloves, footwear. But then also, and this is something that people don't always know, two things. One, folks are always looking for redirection to resources. They don't even know what's available to them a lot of the times. Yeah. And so that's a very big concern right there. And then the second thing is they're longing for just human compassion and connection, conversation, stories, caring, being seen as a human being that's maybe at a low point in their life, but still has a spirit within, still has an opportunity to overcome whatever it is they're going through so that they can contribute back to society one day when they're ready. And so those two things are the biggest things. They're the most impactful.
I feel like we could all use a little more compassion and empathy in our lives. And I want to bring in Ron here, who's one of our callers. Good afternoon, Ron.
Hi.
How you doing?
Good.
Give us your thoughts on this. Do you feel safe, or what do you think needs to happen?
Well, I think it's a human rights travesty.
What do you mean by that?
Well, people with mental illness left to their own devices on the streets, fending for themselves, sleeping in front of the hospitals, crying out for help. These people need care.
Mm-hmm.
They need a place where they can go, care, to help them cope with life. And we've got addicts running around. This fentanyl crisis. The drug is very powerful. It causes paralysis in them, and they go into rages, and they don't know how to cope. So, like, if you have a person like my mother had Alzheimer's, well, we certainly didn't let her run around the streets.
It really speaks to that compassion and the empathy that Daniel was speaking. Ron, thank you so much for your call. Appreciate that. Daniel, your response to that, when we talk about, that need to help people that are struggling with mental health, with addictions, and really focusing on some of those struggling areas to make things safer.
Yeah, I would have to agree with Ron when it comes to the fact that we've been able to identify there's an issue, but now we need to identify what the solution is for each individual that's suffering. Like he clearly stated that these people are suffering and they're struggling, and it's a disease and it's addiction. It's not indicative of who they are at their core, but it's who they're presenting themselves as in the moment, because they're living with mental illness and they're struggling with potential psychosis. So they are not capable in those moments of regulating themselves, and they are crying out for help, and they're voicing that their needs are not met, and there isn't a one fix, one for all solution. Every person's situation is different, and their care plan and their safety plan needs to be specific to whatever it is that they themselves are struggling with.
Yeah, it seems like we can't just have one blanket idea that is one size fits all for everybody.
Absolutely.
We want to hear from you, 204-780-0893. Do you feel safe? What do you think these issues are that we need to be dealing with? And how can we do better? Again, you can text us as well, 204-588-7355. I guess, Daniel, what role do we as citizens play in keeping each other safe out on the streets?
One thing that I've been made privy to that I really admire for a variety of reasons is the use of social media in a positive aspect. So what I mean by that is on Facebook, there's numerous neighborhood groups where they share resources, they share concerns, they voice situations that they've experienced, and they come together collectively to promote the safety of their area, but the unity of the people within that. And so that was something that I really enjoy, and I myself am in my area's little group there, and we certainly talk and share how we can support one another. So I think that promotes solidarity, that promotes unity, that promotes camaraderie, but it also promotes safety. So that's one thing there that I think is really good for the community. The second thing that I really think is tremendous in Winnipeg, and I've said this many times in the past, that we set the bar for this, is the grassroots organization. Because those are the frontline community-based folks that are rooted in compassion and empathy and good intentions, and just doing it for the right reasons with no ulterior motives, and they're just doing the work from the heart. And so those two things, I think, really set the bar on what Winnipeg is capable of, and it's unfortunate that the need is there for those things, but I really admire that we've been able to do that organically.
Daniel, we're getting some more texts in, so I want to read some of those so you can comment on those as well. Again, this topic has been, and safety has come up because we've seen a number of recent attacks. We had 2 young people in separate random attacks, one attacked with a machete, one attacked with a baseball bat. These kids, they really are kids. They're teenagers, young teenagers who are now dealing with life-altering injuries. This texter says, I'm a parent of 2 teens living within a block of the terrible machete attack this past weekend. Several similar attacks happened the same night within a few blocks. Though they have to walk to school or a friend's house during the day, their kids never walk in the dark or go to the 7-Eleven in the evening. There is way too much random violence. It's tough as a parent. The trauma of violence and overdose deaths are reverberating in our city. And we're hearing from people that this isn't just a downtown issue anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Where are these youth getting these weapons from?
That's one of the main questions that I ask myself. I talk about the fact that they're getting access to these weapons and how available they are to them. But I also think that through glamorization of games and music and stuff, but also untapped creativity, that a lot of these youth could be able to construct their own devices regardless of whether or not they can access them. It's scary when they get things like guns and bear mace and stuff. And I truly don't think that they can even grasp or conceptualize the severity of the consequences of using those things. Like, oftentimes they have no idea that, it is as bad as it is. And what's even scarier is when there's not really the remorse either. And I think that all ties down to, lack of mentorship, the environment which they come from. I don't know the circumstances that every perpetrator comes from, but I certainly know that chances are good they're not getting the support, the nurturance, the love, the tenderness, the investment that every child, teen, adolescent needs in order to become the best version of themselves.
So we've heard from Mayor Scott Gillingham, who says he would support a machete ban. The Justice Minister, Matt Weaves, says the province is going to be, taking steps towards limiting the sales of machetes. What would you say to someone who feels like they need to carry their own weapon right now to keep themselves safe?
So that's the thing that's scary. Oftentimes, if you think you need to have something in order to protect yourself from somebody else who has something, then it doesn't really matter how many restrictions are put in place. People are very resourceful when it comes to their survival. And so that in itself can be very, very scary. I don't recommend meeting violence with violence or aggression with aggression. It will never end in the way that you would hope. So with regards to that, I think we need to just, again, find ways to support each other and look out for one another. And the one text message had mentioned, until things get better, maybe we don't go to the 7-Eleven at night. Maybe we don't let our children roam alone. I myself am a father of 3, and I certainly don't enjoy driving everywhere. But if it means that my child is safe until I know that it can be, guaranteed, I'm going to do that.
Yeah. Our text lines are open. Our phone lines are open. Phone number 204-780-0893. You can text us, 204-588-7355. We have another text here, Daniel. This one's straight to you. The person works downtown at the University of Winnipeg. They say daily they see open drug consumption. Can safe consumption sites help alleviate the risk to public and the students who attend school downtown? Your thoughts?
It's proven. It's proven in other provinces that those are effective programs and structures in order to support folks that are living with addictions. It's a harm reduction approach, so you're meeting folks where they're at with compassion and an open mind, and then when they feel that it's safe to be supported in the way that we would allow, they tend to utilize that more, and it has been proven to mitigate and decrease the amount of usage we see on the streets, but also on like a further level, it has also decreased the opportunities for transmission of disease, because they have access to supplies, they have access to safe space, they have access to the support that they need in order to meet their addiction needs.
We've been speaking a lot about the violence among young offenders because we've been seeing a lot of that. A lot of these young violent offenders and some of the older ones, they're repeat offenders. So who, are they beyond the prevention point? What can be done to really break those cycles that we see some of these offenders getting stuck in?
So whenever I hear about reoffending or the continuance of a cycle, you have to look at the collective picture. So if the scenario is that a young man or a woman or person, individual, has made a decision to commit a crime, but they live in poverty, they have no mentorship, they have no food, they have no adults, they're surrounded by gangs, they're in the same area where everyone's doing the same exact thing, and then they get caught and punished for it, and then they're released back into that exact same environment. You can't expect different results if you're doing the same thing over and over and over. And so I think that there needs to be like an aftercare plan or some kind of implementation of follow through and follow up for people who have the potential to reoffend, so that we can set them up for success, because they've already proven to us what their circumstances have made them capable of doing, because we don't always know the reasons. But now we need to know how we can come up with the solutions and the support to prevent them from doing it again.
It's that support and programs that we hear from a lot of different groups about, especially when people have been in jail, been incarcerated, and then they get released. We hear from some of these groups that there's not enough support after the fact, and people don't often have places to go. So they end up back in those same situations. And when we're talking about reoffending, just yesterday, the province announced the new ankle monitoring program, and this is to keep tabs on those reoffenders. I want to get your thoughts on that program.
So I think that's a great idea if you're looking to track the individual, but again, it doesn't speak to the betterment of the environment they're finding themselves in, right? So again, like the opportunity to reoffend is there, and the ankle monitor will tell you where they are, and it will notify you if they leave the parameters that they're confined to, but it doesn't limit the opportunity to re-engage in the activity that they've historically done as a result of their dynamic. Like, it has to be bigger than that. There has to be an aftercare plan. There has to be ongoing support. There has to be quality assurance. There has to be, you have to invest in people. If you're not invested in people, then you're left to your own vices. And if you've never had support in the entirety of your life, you don't know better.
Often from these groups, we hear about people working in silos where it seems like we need to get out of those silos and be working collectively through all these different programs. Another text that we got in here saying they agree this is not a downtown issue. Perpetrators use buses and contribute to crime spreading throughout the city. And we are seeing specifically a lot of property crime that moves to the suburbs as well. Are you seeing crime really spreading? Is this no longer a downtown issue?
Oh, absolutely. And the various types of crime are spreading in various types of ways. So in the area that I stay, I'm not seeing an increase in physical harm, bodily harm crime, but I'm seeing an increase in vandalism and property theft in order to meet whatever needs these folks have. And so through those group chats and those neighborhood chats and stuff like that, everyone is keeping everyone updated. And I think the majority of homes in my area have, doorbell cameras and property cameras and motion detecting lights and or animals with warning signs and stuff. So those little things are deterrents, but they're also supports for spreading the message of awareness to the people around you.
Daniel, you work directly with youth. What do you hear from them?
They need more. Well, first of all, they think that mentorship and any kind of supports that they're getting is too good to be true. And they're fearful that they're going to lose it. That's an indication that they've never had anything before, and they're really valuing what they have right now. And so every youth that's been involved in the programs that I facilitate, they find themselves belonging to something positive. They find themselves surrounded by like-minded, goal-oriented peers. They find themselves seeing potential in themselves that nobody else ever saw, so that they themselves couldn't see it either. But when they have a mentor who says, hey, you're great, you could do this, you're capable of this, I truly care about you, and there's no conditions to that, they can become the best versions of themselves. The scary thing is there's just a very big lack of support with that, and there's no shortage of youth in need of mentorship. So we have to find a way to create a sustainability, but also a way to reach more and consistently.
That positive sense of belonging. We got another text here. Somebody says, well, it's fair to have sympathy for people who truly need help. It doesn't seem right that homeless encampments and some of the individuals who inhabit them are making it feel or seem to be unsafe to walk through areas like the Forks or a park or downtown. Quickly, just want to get your thoughts on that, Daniel.
Oh, yeah, so we support the encampments a lot. We have the boat on the river as well, and a lot of times that's just a defense mechanism for those folks. They have been displaced to the point where they find themselves utilizing the land, and even that isn't consistent or safe. Winnipeg Police can come in there, fire can come in there, the society can come in there. Other community members in other encampments can be laterally violent to each other. So, right off the hop, their guard is always going to be up. Mm-hmm. And an example of that is I might approach an encampment as myself, and they might have that same guard up. But when I have my vest with my logo and they know who we are, the guards come down because they know what the intentions are. So I think it's good to have sympathy for those folks because of their situations, but also just be cognizant of the fact that their guard has to be up because it's 24/7 survival mode.
We will leave it there. Thank you, Daniel.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Daniel Hidalgo is the founder of Sabe Peace Walkers. Thank you, everyone, for your role in this conversation today. We appreciate it. We are just finishing up here, but there's more to come on Up to Speed. Chloe Friesen, what's coming up?
Hi, Brittany. We're actually kind of continuing this conversation on Up to Speed. Yesterday, the province announced a new ankle monitoring program to stop crimes by continual culprits. So we'll hear from an expert who says ankle monitoring alone won't fix all the issues. That's coming up on Up to Speed.
Thank you so much. You're listening to CBC Radio 1. Next up, Quirks and Quarks.